anybody who knows me, I probably completely lost count how many times I've already had this rant. But seeing all these new MMOs and people always comparing it to WoW, or people just not being very thrilled with what's offered nowadays, it's hard not to look back at the golden age of Star Wars Galaxies, and for me to just go ahead and go on and lament about how amazing it was, because in my opinion, it truly was. I mean, even to this day, as far as this is where it goes from being opinion to actual fact, there's very few games that gave you the kind of freedom, had the amount of content, just overall options to choose from, as far as how you play the game, what you do with it, than Star Wars Galaxies. And I kind of go into a lot of what I'm talking about to anybody who may not be familiar with it. Because unfortunately, when somebody says Star Wars Galaxies, a lot of people think of the horrible, horrible reboot abomination thing that Sony Online Entertainment decided to do with it to try and go up against WoW when they really didn't need to begin with. The funny thing is that whole change from what it was to what it became is what actually caused a mass exodus of all the current players to kind of just shift over to World of Warcraft. So, I mean, the game dethroned itself. It wasn't like WoW that came along when it got out of the way, there's a new guy in town who's better. No, it killed itself. And then just WoW took its place and has been kind of keeping it ever since. So, yeah, I mean, Star Wars Galaxies started many different years ago. I don't remember the exact date, so I kind of have a page with most of that information up, so that way I'm just not talking out my ass. The official release date, at least in the US, was June 26th of 2003. Publisher was obviously LucasArts, and it was Sony Online Entertainment. I could have sworn it was somebody else from the beginning, but I guess I was mistaken. I guess I just, whenever I think of them, I just think of what they did, and I just hate them for it. I mean, there was so much that you could do. The whole point of the gameplay is it was very open-ended. I mean, it wasn't your traditional quests that you could go on like you could in, recent MMOs. You had to search and kind of look around to find quests. It was completely open world. It was almost to the point where it's kind of sandbox-ish. It wasn't somewhat linear to where you had a path that you had to progress, going from certain people to get missions and go on from there. And the beauty of it is you can actually play it however you want to. So if you didn't want to do any of the quests, you really didn't need to. If you didn't even want to do any kind of combat or PvP, you can go throughout the entire game crafting. Basically, the actual options were completely endless. You could do just about anything. It was great. And it's one of my favorite MMOs of all time. And if I could play it in its original state, I probably could. Which there are people out there who've actually worked very hard to come up with emulators for the game, to which as soon as I try and figure things out, that's probably exactly what I'm going to do. In regards to species, there's many different species you had to choose from. For instance, you had the Bothan, which are going to be kind of dog-looking people. You had humans, which are humans. You had the Ithorians, which are the slur that was used against would be the hammerheads, because of the way they look. And the Mon Calamari, which everybody would know the most famous of the Mon Calamari, which would be Admiral Akbar. It's a trap! Rhodians, so if you want to get shot first, you could always go with that class. The Sullustan. You also have the Transdojan, which are the lizard folk, more or less. The Twi'leks, which they were a very popular race, especially if you went the entertainer route. Wookiees, because who doesn't want to be a Wookiee? If you're not going to be one of the other races, that is. But come on, Wookiees, that's awesome. The only thing that really would have topped that is you had playable Ewoks. Yes, that's right, I said it. Playable Ewoks. It should have happened. You also had Zabraks. It was, I guess, for anybody who's unfamiliar with the Zabrak races, the most infamous one being Darth Maul. Unfortunately, yes, I did reference the original 3. Not the original 3, but the prequel 3. You know what I mean. Not only that, you had, instead of just generic preset phase 1, preset phase 2, and so on. You had all these different sliders. So you, unless you went just generic and went exactly what it gave you, or even randomized, still would give you something completely different than what anybody else had. So you were guaranteed to make a very unique looking character. And just all the little nuances and just everything the game had was just great. Right from the very beginning, you had the different planets to choose from to start off at. And you can go to whatever planet you wanted to. Like I said, there was no progression to where, okay, now that you finish this planet, you have to go to that planet, or you have to go to this location, and so on. You can go wherever you want to, you can do whatever you want to. And you would choose your factions. Now, factions were for the point of PvP, which can be initiated at just about any time. But the trick is, you had to be flagged as either your Rebel or Imperial, and then if there's anybody else who's flagged, or if you went to a town of an opposing faction, the NPCs or other players could attack you. Or if you were unflagged and you decided that you wanted to try to attack one of them, in doing so, or even helping somebody else, for instance, if you tried to heal somebody who was flagged, you in turn became flagged and automatically could be attacked by, again, opposing players of a different faction or the cities. Which also made the game great. Okay, and I am going to make some comparisons to World of Warcraft, because I guess that's what people really know best. That's unfortunately the comparison that's constantly drawn in this day and age. You have a bunch of people from the Horde. You can go ahead, I believe one of the main cities was Stormwind, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a very long time since I've played that, which I did, because I try to give a lot of different MMOs a shot. You can go in there, you can go try and attack anything, and it'll be difficult, but you cannot take over that city. In Star Wars Galaxies and a lot of the different computer-controlled cities, if a faction ransacks that location, if they're successful in taking out all the enemy opposing faction NPCs and taking it over, it's under their, they own it more or less. It's now went from being Imperial to Rebel, or vice versa. The economy was completely player-based. Any item you found was made by some kind of artisan of some kind of, either whether they were chef, you had the entertainers, dancers, but that was really more something that wasn't in the actual auction houses or shops. You could go ahead and build houses. You could build furniture for those houses. You could build droids, and it just goes on and on and on. And it was all player-made. It was completely player-based economy, which kind of, nobody really took advantage of it. Really. I mean, you never really saw it to where somebody would go ahead and put up a whole bunch of things for only, one credit, to where it just completely screws over everybody else who's trying to make the same items and trying to make a living off of it, or in-game living off of it. And that was really cool. And even then, you had player cities that would basically be created. So it's one of the few MMOs that actually not only had housing, but as far as housing is actually concerned, I'll probably end up showing an image you had, like I said, all the furniture as far as beds, tables, lighting, everything that's in there is actually player-made. Or purchased from another person who made it, again, still player-made, as I'm kind of just rambling on insanely at this point. And it was just mind-blowing, because I'd never really seen it done in another game before. And I know player housing has been done before, but I don't think I've ever seen it to that kind of extent. And even further, in other expansions, it even came to the point where there was government in-game. You had mayors who, if you had player cities, to which at first, the game started off with only just the main cities that were computer-generated cities, those ports. But it was pretty barren, because you only had, like, on the map, 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dots for the main computer cities. But from there, it kind of exploded over time to where there was God knows how many different player cities. And if your player city had enough residents, you can hold an election for a mayor. Now, in my guild, I kind of just went for it because it was something to try, because it was new. And I guess the other guild members weren't very fond of the other person who was running, so I kind of went in a landslide. And it was interesting because I can go ahead and raise or lower taxes, and the whole point of taxes was to pay for other amenities that would be within the city. Like if you wanted quick transport, I guess, again, as a reference to World of Warcraft, kind of like the Griffins, if you wanted a quick point from one area to another, You had a shuttle that you can go ahead and place, but that shuttle had to be maintained through credits, either on my own or through taxes. Now, I tend to keep taxes low because I always had a lot of credits at the time, so most of the things I would fund on my own. And that's really how you keep a lot of things that are consistent going, like guild halls that people would create, housing. They all had upkeep costs, which really weren't that much, but they were kept in real time. Which is how I kind of started off my career in Star Wars Galaxies. I actually started off as an artisan, and what's really cool is professions were actually the classes of Star Wars Galaxies. You didn't have a standard class, like, oh, you're a warrior, you're going to be a commando, you're going to be a Jedi, which I will get to that. There are Jedi, even before, again, the craptastic new game experience. The way it was broken down is you had God knows how many different trees. You had your basic classes, which start off with artisan, brawler, entertainer, marksman, medic, scout, and politician. But once you went ahead and completed one of those basic different professions, you could unlock, higher professions. As far as you had architect, you had armor smith, bioengineer, bounty hunter, combat medic, carbineer, chef, creature handler, commando, dancer, doctor, droid engineer, fencer, image designer, merchant, musician, pikeman, pistolier, ranger, rifleman, shipwright, smuggler, squad leader, swordsman, tailor, Terraskasi, if I pronounce that correctly, it's more like the hand-to-hand, I think, brass knuckles almost kind of style, artist, or even weaponsmith. And you have 250 points to spend, and you can go ahead and spend it however you want to. So you can go ahead and be a jack of all trades but master of none, or you can master certain specific trees. I started off as an artisan, and what's really cool is you have to scan the planet, and you have to actually go around, and there's certain areas that can have certain different elements and resources that you need. At first, the only thing you could do at lower levels is kind of just scoop it up and just, in small amounts, get what resources you need. As you increase in experience and you get more points and you further progress along the lines of whatever tree you're trying to go to, with me and an artisan, I actually was able to get an actual structure that went ahead and it mined in real time. Again, all I had to do is throw some credits at it. It just did its job, it mined, I'd come back and pick up the crates of resources afterwards. And from there, I kind of went through, tried almost everything that was an artisan that I could think of as far as the main artisan advanced trees. I went first off as a droid engineer. I made it's C-3PO, I know, I'm trying to remember the exact kind of droid, and I really should be smacking myself for just saying this as an actual Star Wars fan. A protocol droid. I made a black protocol droid with red eyes. Red, black's my two favorite colors. I know, it's really lame. But it was funny just to have that there. And then I had an actual spy droid, which was combat ready, on top of the cool little mouse droid that I had. And the beauty of it is, when I was done with that, I went ahead and emptied out the points from that profession and went on to the next profession. But I was still able to keep my droids, which is different than what most MMOs do. Usually if you leave a profession, you sometimes cannot use certain things that you've created anymore. That was not the case with Star Wars Galaxies. From there, I went from droid engineer, I went to weaponsmithing, because I wanted to make myself a nice little pole arm, because I had planned on going combat eventually. I went to armor smith, made myself some nice armor, and with the expansion of jump to light speed, which I'll kind of just jump into that real quick. Jump to light speed was an expansion, exactly as it sounds, which added ships and ship combat. You had real-time dogfighting in space, and it was just so much fun. Which also gave you shipmaker as an elite artisan profession, which I did go into that. I only made a Y-wing and an A-wing, which the Y-wing is a lot of fun, especially if you have a second person in there with you, because then they can go ahead and be the bomber. Although I did prefer the flying around in the A-wing. I never got to make an actual X-wing, unfortunately. But yeah, real-time dogfights, to which you can go ahead and, depending on how many seats the actual ship has capacity for, other people can jump in too, and Rebel, of course. Rebel Alliance, all the way. And I would fly around in my Y-Wing or alone in my A-Wing, and I would take on other players or even just NPCs that were in their TIE fighter, shoot them down, or even take on space missions. Again, just there was so much to do in that regard. So, again, I went from being the whole droid maker, went weaponsmith, then armor smith, then ship maker, and then from there took on, combat, and went into pikeman, because like I said, I won the whole polearm combat, and actually did pretty well. And it was kind of funny because there was rumors of Jedi, which, immediately is something I was going to go for. And at the time, we had some Imperials run into our guild, and it was a few of my friends hanging out in front of the in-game house, and they're like, we're higher level than you, which at the time I don't really think they had levels, they had points. I'm not sure if you really could see how many points somebody had, but they were trying to intimidate us. And we're like, you know what, you are in our territory trying to threaten us. Do you know what's going to happen to you? And it's funny because my friend kind of just pulled a bluff, and it was hilarious. He's like, do you realize this kid is actually one of the first Jedi? And he was pointing to me, and I just played it up. I'm like, yeah, that's right, I'm a Jedi. If you keep messing around, I'll be forced to use the Force on you, kill my lightsaber, and so on. And funny enough, they believed me and just ran away, so it was whatever. But at that point, I kind of decided, yeah, I actually want to be a Jedi. And what was really cool, although it kind of off-put a lot of people, and that's kind of, I guess, what the developers were originally going for, is you literally had to go through 4 months of certain instances, because there are instances in Star Wars Galaxies, although there's not that many. You had to go to certain points of interest, and you basically had to complete certain objectives that were supposed to be pretty secret. But I think I was managed to find it back on the internet around that time, after some people were nice enough to give you a guide. And it probably took me roughly about 4 months just to become Force sensitive. In the meantime, I did take on, when I was still combat, I went creature handler. Which creature handling was a lot of fun. I actually had a Rancor, and it was awesome. And the way you work as a creature handler is there would be the parent creatures, and sometimes you would see a little baby creature. And the thing is, you would kind of have to try and tame the baby creature by just hitting a tame button. But the thing is, you would automatically aggro the parents, and they would chase after you. And you really don't want to try and fight a Rancor, even at higher levels. It was not fun. But it was cool because I managed to try and tame it, and the babies a lot slower than the actual parent. I found this out, so I'm like, that's cool. That's a nice little trick that I learned, to where I would go ahead and try and tame it, try and pull it away from the parents enough. And it would aggro the parents. I'd run away to where it would, no longer be aggro. The baby would try and run back, try and tame it, until it got to the point where I finally got it pulled away far enough to where I was able to tame my own Rancor. Grew it up over time. It was hilarious to throw it in combat because people would just freak out. They'd be like, holy shit, it's a Rancor! Because it's an iconic creature and it can still do some pretty nasty damage in the game. Around the time of the new combat upgrade that they did, a lot of people really didn't like it, and that's kind of where a lot of subscribers started falling off. Because they started doing established levels, they focused a lot more, put a lot more emphasis on combat, and a lot of people didn't like that. It really didn't bother me too much, but on one player's way out, he saw that I was a creature handler, and he gave me a crate dragon, which, holy crap. The second I would summon it, its leg took up the entire screen. Even if I zoomed out, I still only got like the full leg and like a small part of its torso. Named it Godzilla, of course. That was the cool thing bioengineers can do. Anything a creature handler generally cannot tame on their own, bioengineers can sometimes create those kind of creatures for you. And the massive amount of damage that thing did. Unfortunately, I did have to give that up. Because in certain cases, you can't, very few cases, certain things that you create or have cannot be used unless you have that kind of, profession, which creature handler would definitely be one of those. It'd be kind of hard to keep a creature in line if you're no longer a creature handler, versus if you're no longer an armor smith or certain other classes, you'd still be able to use those items and so on. So I went through the rigorous trials to become Force sensitive, and eventually became a Padawan before I was completely pissed off, and the whole new game experience that Sony Online Entertainment decided to go with, they completely gutted the game. Anything that was unique, anything that made it amazing, they practically gutted just about all of it, just to make it a generic MMO that was supposed to be similar to WoW, because again, they were scared. And even to this day, one of the heads of Sony Online Entertainment even admitted, we made a mistake. It's got to the point where more than half of the subscribers left to go to World of Warcraft. I think it was just about all of them. Because it was terrible. Because you then were stuck to a specific class. It was no longer the 34 different professions that you kind of mix and match to create your own class, in a way. You're now forced to go down a certain path. You could be a Jedi right from the beginning, which even they were nerfed uncontrollably, because Jedi originally were almost like mythological creatures. If you saw one, it blew your mind. You wanted to grab a camera, take a picture, and have it be all blurry, and people wouldn't believe you. But there's not that many people who are Jedi, again, because it took about 4 months just to become Force sensitive, but they were badasses. Because it took so much, they were nearly unstoppable. The only person who could go really toe-to-toe with most Jedi would be if you made it to Master Bounty Hunter, which was also interesting. As a Master Bounty Hunter, some of the bounties you would get would actually be on other players, because the storyline takes place during A New Hope. So, even though there's Jedis that are appearing, which a lot of people would argue kind of goes against continuity because the Jedi have just about been wiped out around that time, you can go ahead and create a Jedi, but if you're going around using your Force powers left and right, like, Force Lightning or Saber Throw, because you can be either Jedi or Dark Jedi, there will generally be a bounty put on your head by the Empire, to which Master Bounty Hunter players can hunt you down. Because I actually helped a friend collect on one of those bounties, because there was a Jedi who ran to his home, and you can't charge into somebody's home to kill him. So he asked me, hey man, is he gone? And he was an opposing faction, which is the only reason why I did this dick move. And I don't even know why he trusted me, but so be it. I shouldn't, hate on the guy for trusting another person. It was kind of bad on my part. But again, he was the enemy. Anyways, I told him, yeah, he's gone. Don't worry, come out. He came out, my friend come up from behind. Bah, 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 bah. Just basically stunned him, just shot him down. Collected on the bounty. Even the NPCs, like, I once bitch slapped Vader. You actually do / backhand. And just, again, like, the little nuances and things they put into the game, Vader force choked me to death. It was like, oh my god. Stormtroopers, if you / spit at them or do anything bad, they will gunbuck you, you'll be knocked out, and you usually have to pay a fine. Just all these little details, you can tell they put in so much effort in the game, and it really showed. And it was very fun. And I really miss it. As you can tell by the fact, it's probably, a good 23 minutes into this video, and I'm still ranting on about it. But again, all of that was kind of just taken away with the new game experience that Sony Online Entertainment decided to implement, because they wanted it to be new and hip, and with all that effort of basically making a new game, taking what was great and turning it into crap, instead of taking a crap and turning it into something great. The graphics, when it first came out, were good for a time. Again, down the line though, if you look at graphics compared to today, it wasn't that great. So with all that time, money, and effort that they used to basically make a whole new Star Wars Galaxies, they could have taken all that time and effort and money and instead just updated the graphics, patched the game, make it look better that way. Because they did slightly improve the graphics, and even then it wasn't that great. Again, they were mostly focusing on just creating a new game from what they had almost entirely. And that's kind of why, I really do dislike with a burning passion Sony Online Entertainment. By extension, not a big fan of Sony, although I still have a PS2, have a PS3, and still play their games. I'm just kind of bitter, because Star Wars Galaxies I'd probably still be playing to this day. If it were the golden age of Star Wars Galaxies, not Combat Upgrade, which wasn't that bad to me, but still is meh, or the abomination that is new game experience. Sorry for the coughing, throat's dry, don't really have much to drink. But yeah, there's more stories to tell, and between me rambling on like a madman, I'm probably forgetting some things. That's kind of why I wanted to have some of these notes on hand. But that's really what a lot of people are currently missing out on, and I really would like to see that kind of innovation, or even just all that content brought back. It may have been overwhelming to some, but there's nothing wrong with having more options. There's nothing wrong at all to have that kind of freedom to do what you want. I mean, after all, the whole point is if you're going to be sitting there spending so many hours of your life a day, you might as well be able to do a lot more with it than what we're given in most MMOs nowadays. And there's too many people, just because MMO is, not MMO, World of Warcraft is the standard for MMOs nowadays, it really doesn't offer you as much as they want people to think. And it's sad that so many developers are trying to emulate that just because it was successful from now up until today. And it just makes money. So they want to make money. They want it to be successful. And even BioWare, as much as I like BioWare, and even though I did like Star Wars The Old Republic, they kind of dropped the ball on that too. They easily could have taken what was from Star Wars Galaxies, kind of added to that, and done something different with it. That's kind of why I'm keeping an eye on Pathfinder Online. For anybody who's familiar with D&D or Pathfinder, it's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be, at least from what it's saying, taking elements from Star Wars Galaxies. They didn't say specifically Star Wars Galaxies, but a lot of what they want to do with it is similar to the content you would find in there, and probably some other older MMOs. Not really many of the newer ones. So, yes, this is my love letter, my open love letter to the golden age of Star Wars Galaxies, and my shake fist at Sony Online Entertainment. You guys done goofed. Pardon my not French, but you guys fucked up. I can say it any other ways, but I'm still bitter about it, still upset. Still being a fanboy crybaby about it, but so be it. I at least appreciate that you managed to listen this far, or at least as far as you did manage to listen before you just got sick of me rambling on. And yeah, Star Wars Galaxies, if you're interested, like I'm gonna try and do, they do have emulators, try and get in on it. If anything, you know, leave comment below of what server you may already be playing on, or what you plan on playing on. Maybe we can go ahead and get things together, start a guild, so on, and go from there. Thanks for listening, and until next time.